was asked to come to this event, I thought, oh, how can I respond to the theme of this event, which is human rights in the time of austerity? And I thought the first thing I would like to say is that the connection between human rights and austerity is actually not an obvious one. This might look like a provocation, because I know that you, as an audience, and ourselves as a panel, have a very strong understanding of human rights and will be passionate about human rights in some way. But I would like to say something about the public understanding of human rights, and what's the problem with human rights not being accessible to everyone, and then why this connection is important. So I think human rights are a rather abstract concept. So if according to the Human Rights Action Center, less than 5% of the world's population knows of the Declaration of Human Rights existence. So we know about it, but only 5% of the world's population knows about it. And in the public imagination, and I teach many Chinese students, in the public imagination, human rights are usually associated to abuses and violations of human dignity, which happen to people in distant world sites, usually in oppressive regimes, and usually associated to war, persecution, or torture. However, we know that this is not the case, that human rights are very close to us, and that's one of the reasons I would like to explore this connection. So I would like to say that despite these limitations, the human rights regime is today at the heart of the political agendas in most Western liberal democracies. Political leaders and governments often refer to human rights issues in public and political discourse when they want to justify policy measures on children's issues, poverty, sexual and reproductive health. So human rights and the human rights regime is widely popular in these days. In the UK, despite media and public outcry on how spending cuts are disproportionately eating women, children, lone parents and pensioners, in a nutshell, some of the most vulnerable people in our society, I don't think there has been a wide discussion of the impact of the government's agenda on human rights. It seems to me that in the UK, many of the austerity measures implemented by the current government and the previous coalition governments, such as the dismantlement of public infrastructures from local libraries to Sure Start centres, sports facilities, supporting families, children and the disabled and the elderly, can be seen as a violation of human rights, affecting those close to us, not distant others, not those who live in oppressive regimes. Cuts to social security, which Ruth has mentioned, which have been implemented through a range of welfare reforms and include the introduction of the benefit cap, freezing of house benefit, freezing of child benefit, tax credit alterations, and the abolition of pregnancy grants, they indirectly discriminate against women and disabled people to the extent in which they impact their access to the right to social security. So what I would like to suggest is that the government's defence of its welfare reforms on the grounds of budget deficit reduction is silent about the fact that growing inequality is a denial of human rights. And I want to explain what I mean by this. In my view, an important dimension of the austerity agenda is that inequality becomes normalised and legitimate in the current government's discourse as a justification. But if you think about human rights and what human rights mean more generally, they are rights and obligations that enables us, all of us, to achieve a good life, to have the right to employment, to live a healthy, educated life, and to live with dignity. But however, this is not happening. When competition, rather than equality, becomes a central political and social principle of our society, this also means that, as ordinary citizens, all of us also lose guarantees of protection from the state. So what can be done to ensure that human rights and fundamental freedoms remain protected, which I think is one of the questions we were asked to reflect upon? I don't have an answer. I've got some ideas I would like to share from my knowledge of human rights and discussions I had with my students and colleagues. So I think it is important to remember that as a legal instrument, the human rights regime ended the view that it was up to individual nation states to determine the way they treat their citizens. So the Human Rights Act, which was ratified by the UK in 1998, aims to hold to account the governments of the countries which are members of the Council of Europe. But the human rights regime is not only a legal instrument that demands that governments meet their obligations for the realization of human rights. It is also a very powerful ethical idea. It offers critical standards and judgments that may embarrass and question those that have political and economic power. What I'm going to say now, it may seem utopian, but I do believe in it. So what can we do to embarrass and question those who have political and economic power? Because I think there must be something we can do. If we accept that human rights have the power to mobilize people, and you are all here, so they have, then I think that events like the one we are holding today are crucial to create a wider debate on whether, we need to ask whether, and how the current government austerity program might be neglecting human rights considerations. We need more grassroots initiatives and forums where people can discuss how austerity measures are impacting on their lives, and ask whether the most deprived have minimum levels of income and access to food, shelter, healthcare and information in order to live a good life. However, I think these debates, and I think this is the biggest challenge, they need to encompass the wider society. We need to have the most vulnerable people coming and being involved in these debates. And of course, that is not easy. I don't think this debate should be confined to a dialogue amongst the educated and cosmopolitan elites. And I also think we need to avoid what we could call slacktivism, which is having a culture of debate based on liking, sharing on Facebook, tweeting and signing petitions without a sustained commitment. So what I would like to propose is that we need to work towards a grassroots culture of human rights. I think it is important to acknowledge that what we know and what we do not know about human rights is to a great extent shaped by the media, and that would be the debate for a wider debate. I don't want to get into it. But I would also like to draw attention to the role of the arts in promoting a culture of human rights, which seems particularly fitting considering that this event is part of a human rights, arts and film festival. The arts not only have the power to address and move audiences in ways that politicians and the mass media cannot, but they also have the power to energize the political imagination. They help us to imagine better and fairer political futures. In a research project I'm currently involved, conducting with migrant and refugee artists, how they intervene in public debates about migration, belonging and citizenship, I found in my interviews that the idea of a common humanity, the fact that people are people regardless of their religion, the color of their skin, the country where they are born, is a common theme in the work of these artists. And they use this theme, this idea, to disrupt traditional understandings of citizenship, the distinction between citizens and non-citizens, because migrant artists, as non-citizens, can act in civil ways, they can act as citizens. They use it also to disrupt mainstream media representations of migrant and asylum seekers, and they also use this idea of a common humanity to highlight abuses to the human dignity of refugees and asylum seekers. Now, I just want to highlight this connection between common humanity and human rights. If we think of the opening words of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. So I think it is quite a powerful idea. So I would like to conclude just by saying that I think more attention should be paid to the ways in which the arts can create alternative spaces of debate to discuss issues like migration, citizenship and austerity. I've met and I've interviewed a number of artists whose work deals directly with issues of debt and austerity. And I think these debates are critical for the constitution of a culture of human rights, a grassroots culture where people actively debate and champion the defense of human rights through engagement through the culture and the arts.